Welcome to our second Socratic discussion over units 2 and 3. For our first discussion prompt, we're going to start with the question of how much power do people actually have? Somebody like to start?
I will. I feel that people have as much power as they think they do, or the circumstances that they're in. It depends on their perspective of what they're controlling with.
I would say, in my opinion, I believe that the common people in America have the power to influence change. They can't exactly make an executive decision themselves because that's just not something they can do, but they definitely have the power to influence something.
I agree with what Nutter said about people not having direct power, but the influence to be able to change it. Because a single individual on their own can't really do much in the grand scheme of everything.
I agree with Heath and Hayden's idea that one person can't quite do it, and if they band together and make a group, I feel like they can influence or change.
Never thought of that. Kenzie, what do you think about that question? Why you said that the individual themselves does not have a group behind them?
So basically, I think the general belief here is that as one, we don't really have a lot of power, but as a group, we can change things.
What evidence do you have to show that?
I have that Martin Luther King didn't have a lot of say by himself, but he had a group of people to help him.
I guess I have a question. Do you think if somebody has like enough power or like money or notoriety, do you think they could influence it just by themselves?
I don't think that they would directly be able to change it, but their influence would be greater than that of someone with less money or power.
I would agree with that.
They could get it going a little bit faster.
And then, like, in some cases, people who are abusive to someone, they have more power than the person that's being abused, because the person that's being abused will think of themselves as weak and that they can't do anything, and then they'll just listen to the abuser. That's just my opinion, but
I agree with Heath.
Any other further discussion on that? Okay. Are people actually struggling, or is it just a matter of perspective?
I think that there are people in the world that do struggle because of hunger or poverty or something, but based on the perspective of their own struggle in their setting that they're in, it can be viewed differently or thought differently. So a person in Africa who doesn't have as much food as we have here might have a little more food than somebody else in Africa, so then they would think that they're not as starving as that person is, but we would see that as they're both starving, I guess.
I agree with her, but also it could be the opposite. Like, here, someone could see, living in their car or having to, rent out the basement of someone else's house as struggling, where other people, as you say, in third world countries, might see that as living the high life.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree. I basically with those.
yeah.
What I have is basically what he said. It can be, it's by perspective. Someone could have it they think it's low life, but in a different country, it's actually good.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of where you're from and who you are as a person. It's just in the society that you live in.
Does anyone have something to say about that question? Or you guys got off it?
you could also, I guess I also took it, another way you could think of struggling is like the idea of like racism or sexism. If people are struggling that way in equality and the idea of equality. Does anybody have anything to say about that? If there's people still struggling today in America and the world?
I think there are definitely still people struggling with those issues. There's different levels of it. In America, there's still plenty of racism and sexism, but if you travel anywhere, third world, maybe not third world country, in the Middle East, places like Iraq, stuff like that, they still see women as property. And so that's a little, not that we don't have struggle in America, but it's a little more, I'm not trying to say anything the wrong way, but
It's more in
It's
the
worse
other
in
different
countries.
level of struggle.
Severe.
Yeah.
More severe, yeah. I'd say that like a lot of, not saying that the US, like it's not, like they're not struggling, that some of it is like stereotypes, I guess, like they have their own opinions and everything. But there is people that do struggle with that in the US too.
And I guess I thought maybe, is there some cases of racism and sexism? Is it really as big of a problem as it is?
It depends on where you are, in
Is-
my opinion.
Is it maybe exaggerated? Maybe like with the media, is the media exaggerating?
I agree with Alexia because more where you're at, like say, like depending on the race, like there might be more of one race somewhere, so the people there are more used to like that race, and so they're not as have stereotypes. But like in another part of the country, they have a different race, so they have different stereotypes.
It's kind of a majority minority kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
Anything else?
So you're saying where you are geographically, not where you are in your mindset of
Yeah.
life?
So like in rural Iowa, it's not really a big problem. I've never experienced it, I've never seen any. So maybe in the bigger cities,
Yeah, like
it'd be a bigger deal.
It also depends on how one person is raised, so.
Yeah, definitely.
So to summarize, we all kind of think it depends on your, not just geographic, but like how you were grown up to be here.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we'll agree on
say
that.
that.
How do others' perspectives affect how one view freedom?
In the US, we're technically free, but like people in the Middle East and stuff, they aren't. Like what Hayden said earlier, women are still considered property, so technically they're not free like we are.
What do you mean by technically? About America being technically free?
In my opinion, being completely free would be like the purge 24/7. So, but that's
So with that, I would say that if America were technically free, that we're not technically free in America because we still have laws and regulations.
yeah, which helps keep the people safe. So they're
which we
needed.
need. Like,
So
Yeah.
we're not truly free.
we're not exactly free.
Kind of like what we had in the last suffrage discussion. We discussed true freedom, if it is or not.
Yeah.
And can we agree that it's not, America isn't truly free? We have restrictions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it also has to, like with the perspective, like we might think that we're not like understand that we're not completely free, but like those women in like the third world countries that they don't have freedom, they might think that we're free.
Exactly.
And with that, I don't know exactly how it is over there. I don't know if there's riots against it. I'm sure there's not, but those women over there could see themselves as free because they don't know anything else. And so even though our perspective is that they're not, theirs could be that they are.
I mean, off that kind of, I think like events in their status in the world kind of makes their freedom different from ours, I guess. Like how I said about people like Saudi Arabia or something. Like women, their freedom is a lot different from ours because they can't like show their face or anything like that kind of.
Yeah, we're relatively, really free, regarded to or comparing us to other countries. I think we can agree on that. But another question like I think we can ask is like how does like say an example is just in America, how does one's kind of influences in life in their lifetime, how does that how they view freedom and like how they how they think how much freedom we should have. Like how does one's like race, gender, political stance, other influence affect how they view freedom, how much we should have.
Well, African Americans, they like some or most, depending on where they live, their parents teach them to be weary of like everything because of the past. And then we aren't as much because we don't have to fear for our lives like the African Americans did back in the day.
I said, like, if you're in a race and you have to grow up with their stereotype all the time, you might view your freedom as being without that stereotype. That you might think that that's a particular type of freedom that you want, where most people don't have to worry about that type of. I hadn't thought of that before.
That's a good point.
So you're saying stereotype is a restriction or a struggle, an obstacle that must be overcome?
Not necessarily.
Oh, no.
I think you could have a stereotype, and it's just a stereotype is just a general term for a group of people. So say you could break the stereotype, and you don't have people will generalize you, but it doesn't mean you can break away from that.
Like there's the stereotype of blondes being completely and totally dumb and they're not, so
So obviously that's just a stereotype.
Yeah.
Stereotypes aren't necessarily always true for everybody.
Yes, but wouldn't the fact of you needing to break away from it make it a restriction in itself?
Can you elaborate
Yeah.
on that?
So what Hartwig said was that we could assume that stereotypes in general were a restriction, and your first statement of your argument was that they were not, but then later came to say that they could be able to break away from it. Would the fact of them needing to break away from it consider it a restriction?
depends on your viewpoint.
I feel like freedom and stereotypes will never be able to will never not have stereotypes. I feel like that's never gonna change. Like we all
Yeah.
have our opinions of everything. I feel like that'll always be there.
I
Right?
see what you mean.
Does that always being there have any connection to humanity's continual struggle?
I
Yes,
think so.
it does.
I feel like stereotypes just make America or like the world in general struggle. Like people have stereotypes of each other, and then that just leads to differences that people don't agree. And then
Yeah, we've always had stereotypes. And there's no way they're just gonna go away.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I think
I agree with the general vibe around here that we have stereotypes, and for the most part, I think they are a struggle for some people. And other parts, it's a stereotype, but like not many people believe it. Or it's not really most people don't revolve their lives around it. It doesn't really restrict them. I guess I don't know.
you just move on from it.
Yeah.
You don't have to comply with whatever they say.
Caitlin, do you have anything to say on that?
I just agree because I don't we'll always have the stereotypes and stuff.
All right, we're gonna move on to our last discussion point here. It says, at what point does a protest no longer constitute a protest, or rather a disturbance of peace?
I think that a protest turns into a disturbance of peace when it gets violent and it hurts people around them that are involved in protests or something.
I agree with that.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
we're all entitled to peaceful protests. Those are perfectly fine. But once people are getting hurt or someone's getting personally attacked, it's gone a little too far, and it's no longer just a protest. I wouldn't call it a disturbance of peace, but it's more like, is it really constitutional for you to be able to do that?
Yeah, I guess you have to draw the line between what is a protest, a peaceful protest, and then when does it become, a riot or some kind of form of violence.
Mhm.
And then that's like, the First Amendment right says we have the right to protest. So I guess it's taking away from your right, but then you have to also apply common sense into it. When do you draw the line? That's the real big question.
I think it becomes a disturbance of peace when like someone physically gets hurt, like when they were blocking off like the interstates and stuff, and there was like an ambulance in one, and the person died because they couldn't get to the hospital because of that. I think that's a disturbance of peace. And that shouldn't be allowed in my opinion.
What if instead of a person physically getting hurt, like say property gets damaged, would you guys also consider that a disturbance of peace?
Yeah.
Vandalism.
I feel like
I,
that is constitutional. Just breaking up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do that, and then they say they did it in the name of protest because it was unjust what other people are doing.
If
And
you
they get
break
away
That's
with that.
trespassing.
if you break the law, it's not a protest, it's a disturbance, most
Yeah.
definitely.
That's what I'm agreeing with. But how many times do we see groups of people tearing down statues or something, and then they say it in the name of protest? They shouldn't be able to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I guess do protests actually do anything anymore nowadays?
I think they do something because they get the word out to other people. Sometimes they just don't do anything. It just gets like the idea and the topic out.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know, after the civil rights movements, I wouldn't say a lot of protests do things. They definitely spread awareness, but how many times does a law or something actually change?
I feel like in the United States, we're so politically, polar. You're either conservative or you're progressive. You can't really change like people's minds or anything really anymore. I feel like people are pretty set in stone what they believe.
Because even if you do have a protest, their mind isn't probably going to change just because you got a group together and went against it. Like they already have their idea in their mind, unless somehow they like persuade them into it or something like that. Which doesn't happen a lot.
It's pretty rare.
Yeah, that'd be pretty hard.
But there could be like protests even though they don't change anything. They could like Caitlin said, raise awareness so that other people are like, oh, I see your guys' point of view. I agree with you guys and stuff like that.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Too.
So it can make changes little by little.
Mhm.
I think I could bring up the awareness.
All right, we're gonna,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm gonna see what you think, Keith.
You can have our last word, Heath.
All right. This has got to be good. I agree with what you guys are saying, but I also like the fact that while raising awareness, you get more people into the group, and then with our first discussion point, a larger group would be able to have more influence in what happens in the end.
Nicely drawn together. All right, good job, guys. Outside circle, what did the inside circle do well?
Incorporate everyone.
Yep, they did.
No
Okay.
awkward silence.
Yeah, they kept the discussion flowing. And how did they do that? If things kind of died down a little bit, how did they keep the discussion going?
Conclusion.
Ask a question.
Came to a conclusion, asked questions, you kind of summarized, good. Yep, what was gonna be said over there?
They would talk like peace and kind of
Mhm. A good natural pace, yeah. Yeah, what else did they do well? Could you hear everyone?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. What were the best parts of the discussion where you really felt like, oh, this is good discussion? Or versus, oh, they're discussing and it sounds like they're all talking.
I like the last question.
Okay, why?
There was a lot of opinion
Okay.
rather than everybody was like, oh yeah, I agree.
Okay, so when there's more variety of and perspectives. Good. What else made the best part of those conversations? There's one word I'm actually looking for here. Evidence. Okay, when your discussion sounded really productive to me was when you were using those points of evidence, your examples, points from history, from culture, from the text, more so than when you're just sharing your opinions, because sometimes that can turn into kind of talking about something instead of understanding something when you're just sharing opinions. But you guys did a very good job. So proud of the growth that I've seen. Outside circle, what are some things that you're going to want to do so that you can make it even better for the second round? What are points that you're going to keep in mind? Or want to continue doing like they did?
I want to do how they did. They did a pretty great job. Very well rounded.
Well grounded?
Less
Rounded.
awkward introduction.
Oh. I didn't think it was awkward at all.
Oh,
Hey,
geez.
somebody's got to lead it.
That's right. Very, very nice job. What'd you say? Yeah, letting other people pose questions. Posing more questions is a good idea. Yeah. All right, quickly and quietly switch places. The inside circle, make sure you find a place with a little sheet next to it. So you're either focusing on our content as a summarizer commentator or on our discussion skills.
Sitting there, sitting there.
I didn't understand that.
Great.
I knew you were going to do that.
No.
The one that I brought up.
Why would that
Talking weird.
Yeah, we went to hyena and everybody started laughing.
Oh, one of my ones. I thought something about something I said. It was really
Mackenzie looked at me.
It was right when Sam asked me to say something. I had no idea what to say.
Oh.
That's why I was laughing. How cool.
No, the website.
Oh, sorry.
Just use those.
Yeah.
Strict.
Actually
looking at the Summarize
It is
Who was
Friday.
summarizing?
Me.
So we're
my-
4 hours.
Oh, is it called back channel?
Sam.
It's on our website.
All right, are you ready?
We have to wait for Caprice.
I'm so ready.
I'm not ready at all. Camera.
Oh, God.
Make sure you change it.
How about you move over just a tiny bit and then, yeah.
Hey, kids, go.
Go to the website. It's way down this way.
He doesn't have any code. It's short reach.
Is it recording?
It is. Okay, so I'm actually gonna let you start and Caprice is gonna come right in and melt in.
Okay. Oh, like right now? Oh,
No.
are you sure?
Okay. So,
How much power do people actually have?
I think they have as much power as they will have. So if someone sets their mind to something and pushes for that, for what they believe in, they could get a group of people, help them succeed, or do whatever they feel is right.
I kind of think that people only have as much power as like other people are willing to give them. Like, yes, you can do things, but say, say the president wants to make an executive order, he can't do that without having the Senate's approval for doing so. He can't execute his full power
So
until.
like legally,
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Okay, through. I was talking about us, people in general. Because I was gonna bring up the fact, just the civil rights movement in general. Like, for the most part, say, the South didn't want to give up slavery or whatever. And they weren't willing to give the North that power to free all slaves, but What happened?
Devin, what do you think?
I think we have the power to do whatever we want.
Like, we have the power to do anything we want.
We were saying.
Do you think it comes down to legally?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I kind of have the same idea as you, but like, I believe we all have power that we allow ourselves to have.
I think it just depends on like the position of the individual. Like if you're like a cop or a teacher or a student, just how much power you have to what you do in the world.
What's your perspective, Tori?
I thought as a citizen, I don't have as much power as like somebody with a title would, like say the president. We don't have very many influential voices unless they have a higher name. So
Definitely agree
Yeah.
with that.
So it's like class standards.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
But you could please.
I wrote that I believe everybody has as much power as they let themselves have, because people like Martin Luther King or like Harriet Tubman, they weren't handed what they did for the world. They just stood up for what they believed in, and others followed.
I see both sides.
Legal action, personal. So leading to the second question, are people actually struggling or is it a matter of perspective?
I think it's a matter of perspective because, like, say someone of a higher, because everybody has different ways in which we all struggle with, like what one person might say is a struggle, the other person might say is not.
I agree with that.
I agree with that too.
I feel like
go ahead.
I feel like struggling is a big issue if you do see that someone is struggling. But there are people that do struggle and there are others that don't. It's just we don't some people can't see that someone else is struggling, but others can see. So it's both perspective and struggling.
So what do you see as a definition of struggling?
Like I don't know.
Because I had it
Like being like if someone's poor,
right.
you can clearly see that they're poor. Like
Right.
our homeless person on the street, you can see that.
That was one of the things I said, like, you think our small problems that we have, like we are in a school and we're like, oh, well, I'm struggling because I have a test tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or like, some people don't even know where they're going to sleep tonight. Like,
Yeah.
it all depends.
I agree with that. It's definitely a matter of perspective, though, because you don't know unless you're in that situation.
Right.
I agree with that too.
Well, what do you think?
I agree with that just because you really don't know where you're going to sleep if you're a homeless guy or if you're going to be moving and then find somewhere and then have to like get kicked out of that spot and have to go find somewhere else. Or
What were you gonna say, Colby?
I was gonna say it's a matter of perspective for the most part. I guess everyone struggles with their own things. It depends on your mental state, financial situation, and just as a family as a whole or whatever. People in third world countries or whatever don't have the luxuries that we do. But when we wake up cold or whatever, it might be like cold in your room or whatever, you think, oh, this sucks. It's kind of a struggle. Well, there's people that don't get a bed or don't get a blanket, sleeping outside next to a tree or whatever.
With like a makeshift blanket of a garbage bag or something.
The thing is, we see that as struggling when they might see no problem with it. They're perfectly happy with it.
Right.
They might feel like
I mean,
it's just their lifestyle.
That's just a matter of how they've lived.
How about you, Devin? What do you think?
I think, certain people do struggle a lot, but then I also think that it's the way that they view things.
So what you're saying is just perspective.
Yeah.
You think it's perspective overall.
But there's a lot of people that do have a lot of struggles.
Oh, yeah.
So to summarize, we all think it's mostly perspective, how you see it, but there are definitely people who are struggling.
I also feel like it's kind of wrapped around individuality.
How you see a situation.
So moving on to the next question is, how do others' perspectives affect how one views freedom? Firstly, I think it's a interesting question. I think a powerful hierarchy. Just take an example for like North Korea. People think that they have it pretty decent if if they're married to a high-ranking officer or whatever, but still their standards are not very great compared to someone in the middle class or low class in the United States.
It's more like people just start to view their ideas of freedom as like facts, and they start to try to convince other people that what
Do
they
you think
believe
it
is
is an
wrong.
opinion and people try to make it facts?
Yes, I most certainly think it's pretty much that way. As Mark said in Korea, their leader has basically accepted, has basically made it a fact for people. His opinion has demonstrated his fact on his people.
I think it definitely depends on your situation because freedom doesn't just have to be like as a whole country or like legally your freedoms. It can be like if you live in a household where you're not allowed to leave the house after a certain time, or if you go to a school where it's all girls and there's dress code, or there's no dress code. It really just depends on what your situation is.
I feel like freedom's just everyone's separate opinions. So there's some people that will like say something like Drake said, they'll like try to make opinion facts, and then everybody else follows that one person, even if it may not be correct in other people's eyes. So it's just, I guess it's just your own opinion, unless you do follow that other person's path.
I put down that I thought our perspectives on freedoms came from like our home life, because if you think about it, you share some of the same perspectives as your parents because you grow up with them around you and they're voicing their opinions. So I feel like we're influenced by that. Like everybody's gonna have a different definition of freedom and like how we view it. Some people may think that they're free because they get a car and they can drive around, and other people may be free because they can go to school. We all have different points of views.
How have those perspectives and influences, or have they not? From the time of our literature to today.
Well, back then they didn't have like as much as we do. Like, I feel like social media has a big impact on it because there's so many opinions that go over the internet that certain people start to believe, and they're not actually true, depending on who you are, though. So, and back then, I feel like it wasn't as much of a problem as it is now.
What was not as much of a problem?
Like how we view freedom.
I really agree with that.
How come?
I agree with
Because.
that. I agree with that also because now word travels a lot faster, like with social media going back and forth. And then like they also have like they used to just have horse and carriage, so it'd take them a long time to get like if they're going somewhere far away. Now you can take a car and you get there a lot faster.
Going off of the social media thing, I think it definitely changed how people can change other people's opinions. Like have them follow what you. I mean, if you see like a role model of yours say an opinion about something on social media, how you're gonna agree with it. And I think there's a lot of backlash, especially on social media. If you disagree
with an opinion. There's a lot of people who have their own opinions.
I agree with that. Could you back up your answer, Diesel? Like elaborate a little bit?
Uh, not the-
Just agreeing to agree?
Yeah.
All right.
Drake, what do you think? What do you think about social media?
I think social media, it has its uses, yes, but for what most people use it for, to go make their opinions. Use it to make their opinions facts and everything. I don't necessarily think it should be used for that.
I feel like sometimes it can be really overrated. Like the things that are posted or the things people say.
And I mean, there's people that just use it to voice nonsensical opinions all the time. That's all they do on their social media.
So going off of complaints, turning into protests, at what point does a protest no longer constitute as a protest, but rather a disturbance of peace? Colby?
I think it's just through legal action. I guess they break the law or whatever. Yeah, they just gotta follow the laws. It's still peaceful, but if there's harm to anyone else or property, it's disturbance of peace and vandalism. So
I mean, the First Amendment, it does, if you read it, it actually says you can have the right to peaceful protest, but as soon as it turns violent, it's no longer illegally as a protest.
I feel like you could really tie this into the last question because each person views disturbance of peace separately. So like there's the people that think that murder is okay and then there's the people that don't, and it just basically the legal issues.
Diesel.
I agree with what you said. I mean, it's peaceful, but if you just if you hurt somebody or you have the destruction of property, I mean, it's not peaceful. It's violent.
I feel like at the point when it isn't no longer like a peaceful protest, it's just basic knowledge. It's really when somebody gets hurt or property is being damaged, because protests are really about anger. Like, why else would you protest something unless you were angry about it? So I feel like they can turn violent really fast if there's not certain people trying to control it.
I feel like most of the violent protests are the ones that are aired on TV or the internet.
So are you saying that the media kind of fuels and wants
The
violence?
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's part of their job.
Those are the ones you see.
Yeah, I mean,
they really are.
I don't think they mean to, but they do it so that the whole world starts talking about it.
And
So
that way they get attention. I don't see many peaceful protests ever on TV. See violence.
I've seen them in movies, but not really on TV.
I'm going to pose one last question here as we end, to tie up some things that you guys have just commented on with social media, both in the change in perspective over the years of our struggle, and with what you were saying about the violent protests being what mostly is seen on social media and media in general. So my question is, thinking of social media today as our literature that your children and grandchildren will be reading, what social commentary does that imply or give to society? Think of our social media as today's literature. When your children and grandchildren are reading the literature that you guys are creating, what do you think they'll have to say about it?
I mean, I think it depends. Sorry. I think it depends how it is in the future. I mean, if it's the same as it is today, as far as violence and protests, then I think they'll be like, oh, well, it's not normal, but like it's their normal because it's what happened. It's what's happening.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I was going to say that it just depends on how society changes throughout time. I guess the society isn't the same as it was 20 years ago. So, depending on how that changes, everyone's perspectives and morals are going to change.
I agree with both their views.
So keep in mind that you are the author of tomorrow's American literature today. Right, good job. Awesome job. Okay, outside, oh, sit down, please. Outside circle, what did the, yep, we're still filming. What did the inside circle do well? What did you appreciate about their round?
Incorporated everyone pretty well.
Yes, they incorporated everyone. And what was that?
Connected ideas.
Connected ideas.
Gives their own opinions, like evidence.
Okay,
Summarize each other.
summarize.
No. You share it.
Yep.
That's the point.
That's the point, sharing your opinions with evidence to back it up. What else did they do that was well done? Could you see growth in this Socratic discussion compared to last time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So what I would like you to do is to take your rubrics, look at what you circled, check it off if you're like, yes, I did that. If there's some things that you did that you're like, oh, I wasn't even thinking of doing that, but you know what? I did it. Check that off, and then leave those on the middle chair here. Thank you very much, guys. Good job.